Didn't we don't have security anymore, do we? Good evening. Municipality of Anchorage, Platting Board, December 1st, 2021, now in session. May we have roll call?
Don Porter.
Present.
Kevin Cross.
Present.
Valerie Ritz.
Present.
Jenna Weltzing.
Present.
Karen McGillivray. Present. Ryan Moorman. Present. Zach Young.
Present.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Excellent, I appreciate it. I'm your new chair, Kevin Cross, and we have a couple new other individuals to welcome into our ranks. We have Ryan Moorman, and we also have Zach Young. I appreciate it. And also as chair, I would like to go back to something we used to do. It's been a little over a year, if you don't mind. Can we all stand and pledge to the flag of the United States of America? Shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I'll probably make some procedural errors, but that's okay. Lori here is probably going to throttle me in the side of the head occasionally, just keep me in order. So I appreciate your patience as I take the reins here as chair and get into the groove of making sure everything moves smoothly. So first thing that we have, I need a motion to change the order of the day to add findings of fact in case 2021-0120 and consent agenda item D2A, and to move hearing item F1C before item F1A. Can I get a motion on that?
Kevin, did my motion show up? Oh, it did.
Yes, it's up there.
Moved by Jana, thank you. We have moved by Jana and second by Don Porter. Do I hear any opposed? Seeing none, motion is approved. We shall move to our approvals. Before us, we have action summaries dated Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. Do we have any corrections? I need a motion on the floor to remove the action summary. See, moved by Jana, seconded by Valerie Ritz. Any corrections? Seeing none, action summary is approved. Moving to the minutes dated Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. I have a motion to approve the minutes. Moved by Karen McGillivray and Zach Young, seconded by Zach Young. Any corrections? Seeing none, motion is approved. Special order of business. First, do we have any disclosures? Oh, thank you. See, no disclosures? Oh, we do have a disclosure?
You have two votes.
Oh, okay. What am I?
Ryan Moorman has to abstain from the action summaries, minutes, and finding of facts, because that was not on the board yet.
All right. Excellent.
Same with Zach.
Excellent. Zach, you'll also have a disclosure, and that is that you have to abstain from the finding of facts and approval since you weren't there.
So through the chair, you need to disclose on record, or did you
Um,
already announce it?
I was not here for the November 3rd meeting.
Excellent.
Is there an official declaration I have to make in paper? I was not part of that.
That's sufficient. Thank you.
Excellent.
So the finding of fact is that both Ryan Mormon and Zach Young obviously abstain from the minutes and the findings of fact since they weren't at the last meetings. Okay. Moving on to informational items, abbreviated plat action summaries for 11-1-21, 11-8-21, and 11-15-21 being read into the record. Moving on to consent agenda. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? We have a finding of fact under what, 2021-0120?
So you have a mover and a seconder?
Oh, thank you. We have moved by Jana Weltzen and seconded by Valerie Ritz. Any opposed?
Does anyone want to pull anything?
Oh, we want to, excuse me? Oh. Would anybody like to pull any of these items for discussion? Hearing none, we will proceed.
If there's no objection, it's approved.
Okay, with no objection, it's approved. See, I got Lori whispering over my ear. You got to say this, got to say that. She's got a little letter opener. She's stabbing me in the leg. All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We have none, so we will go. So now we're moving back to Platting Board. We're moving to our cases. Okay. The Platting Board meets each month on the first and third Wednesday, except holidays, as regular meetings. If the Platting Board fails to complete its agenda for its regular meetings, the board carries over to the remainder of the agenda to the following meeting. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meetings is as follows. First, after a staff presentation is complete, the public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Now, a person who wishes to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. First, petitioners, including his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Now, part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Second, representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., they have 5 minutes. And finally, individuals, they have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked a question by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless you're questioned by the board. Any individual may appeal the rights relating to an action to the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 2111-304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date of the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Platting Board prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based on the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either by a written motion alleging new evidence or change of circumstances per AMC 2111-503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision under AMC 2030. Thank you. All right. Okay. We shall now open discussion on case S12641. May we hear, excuse me? Oh, that's correct. Thank you. That's right. We did a change of order. So we are, excellent. So now we're going to do case 2021-0126. If we may hear the presentation through staff.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the rearranging and accommodating tight schedule for tonight. Over the last several years implementing current Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, the Planning Department has become aware of several inconsistencies within it that may pose hurdles to development and/or achieving the regulation's intent. This proposed ordinance before you tonight is intended to remove inconsistencies within Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21 and to better align regulations with current practices. For the Platting Board's purview this evening, the Platting Board is tasked with forwarding recommendations to the Assembly on any code amendments specific to Chapter 8. Within this fairly substantive ordinance before you this evening, Section 15 is the only one that pertains to Chapter 8, and that is the removing the maximum for unit lot subdivisions of 8 unit lots. And we believe that this amendment will implement action items 410 and 417 from the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan by removing restrictions on this option of compact housing. Unit lot subdivisions allow for fee simple lots smaller than those required in the respective zoning districts, and there's a market and need for this type of housing within the municipality, and the removal of the 8 unit lot maximum will allow for larger unit lot subdivisions to be permitted. And I can certainly speak to any aspect of this ordinance this evening, but the only ones that we're looking for a recommendation for the Platting Board on is Section 15. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Mr. Porter?
Yes, to the chair. So as I'm reading it, I see there were several recommendations, Section 8, Section 11, Section 13. Are those not being discussed here then?
Through the chair, I can certainly answer questions on them, but as far as the scope of review for the Platting Board this evening, the Platting Board is only tasked with making recommendations for text amendments that pertain to Chapter 8. And the only text amendment that's being proposed that affects Chapter 8 is within Section 15.
So the other recommendations are not intended to be discussed?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, at this point, we will open the hearing to public testimony. Do we have anyone wishing to testify on case number 2021-0126?
Good evening.
Good evening. May I have your name, please?
Niall Sherwood Williams.
Niall Sherwin-Williams. And Niall, do you represent yourself, an individual, a community council, a group of individuals?
An organization.
An organization?
Yes.
Excellent. And which organization is that?
A nonprofit.
Okay, so a nonprofit does not qualify as a community council, so you would have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Respectfully, through the chair, I believe that it was that Ryan Yelly that was addressing the board at this time earlier?
That is correct.
Okay, so through the chair, when questions were asked, he was quite dismissive as to specifics. This is a very broad document. We're choosing to make differences in our code and in our charter here to a significant degree. One thing that jumped out at me was right on page 2, under section 4, it says adding hangar and private residential as a permitted use in the table of accessory uses. So are we going to have next actual airports that people are constructing all over Anchorage, respectfully through the chair? Lots of regulations as to how homes can be built. I noticed something in there about a static vehicle being there for more than 14 days. And if it's there for more than 14 days, then it has to follow, quote, setback rules from the edge of the street. I remember back to an assembly meeting that just occurred. I remember back at the last assembly meeting, there was someone who spoke during initial audience participation. Actually, there were a number of people, and they were citing a neighbor, and it seemed to be a group attack of citizens against one neighbor that had some RV that was sitting there. So I ask you, body, like, are we going to let people start attacking other individuals in the community over these petty little things, or are we going to start talking about the real truth? I mean, I'd like to have an amendment put in here tonight by a member of this body that stipulates that no planning can be used, no words of bioweapons, no Pfizer shots. We need to shut down the clinics at all the commercial properties, all the public properties. So I'd like to have an amendment put forward by this body tonight. Get a second, and let's have some dialogue on it. I wouldn't like the members of the public to be dismissive, especially the elected officials or volunteers, when they're asked about specifics through the chair. Respectfully, answer directly. You're changing a lot of language. I think we should go through line item by line item and table this. Maybe have some more public discussion. Talking about modifying family dwellings beyond 8 units. We're going to have tenement buildings.
Mr. Nelly, I appreciate your testimony. Does anybody have any questions for Ryan Nelly? Oh, excuse me, was it Ryan Niles? Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote Ryan, Niles Williams. I apologize.
No S.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Niles, if I may, I appreciate it and I understand how passionate you are, and I understand your concern. Just so you understand, the Platting Board, we're not voting on these items. So this board here, we don't have any control over this. That's not what we're doing. What they've asked us is they've brought this to our attention. They want us to look it over. And the only item we as Platting Board are here to either recommend or give instruction on is one item, which was 15, which is the height requirement and limitations on properties. All the other items you're concerned about, unfortunately, aren't being addressed at this meeting. So I hope that helps some, but I appreciate you coming this evening. Thank you.
And frankly, they should be a little more specific as to whether the height requirement is for public or private or commercial, for what use specifically they're making this change for. That would be an important thing for the public to want to know about, I would think, respectfully.
All right, thank you.
Through the chair, I have a question. If staff, could you illuminate what happens next for the public after this packet comes to our body? Next, what's the process?
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, the Planning Board is just issuing a recommendation on one section of the proposed ordinance this evening. After that, that recommendation is going to be forwarded to the Anchorage Assembly, who is the decision-making body on any text amendments to Title 21. So there will be an additional public hearing. The public will be able to testify, and there will be additional potential work sessions and opportunities for the public to ask questions and Assembly members to ask questions. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to testify? Staff, do you have any rebuttal for the testimony that you've heard?
Through the chair, I just remind the public that this ordinance will also be going before the Planning and Zoning Commission on Monday, which will be a full review of the entire ordinance. So, thank you.
Excuse me? Excellent. All right, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion to recommend Section 15 of, 2021-01-26? Thank you. So we're only voting on to recommend or any recommendation text changes on 15. 8 does not apply to us. 8 is a zoning issue and probably go before the zoning board. So 8 is clarifying vehicle static, but that doesn't, clarifying vehicle, it's just clarifying a vehicle left in static. Yeah, that doesn't concern us. We're only doing Section 15.
Thank you. All good?
Yeah. So the motion, is on the screen here if you want to move to approve case on omnibus ordinance. So we have moved by Jonna Weltzen. And seconded by Ryan Mormon. All right, we open. Jana, do you want to state your motion?
Sure, through the chair, I recommend us to send a positive recommendation on section 15 for case number 2021-01-26, an ominous ordinance amending several sections of AMC Title 21 to align with 21, only speaking to section 15 of our packet provided here from staff, to align with the current practices and provide clarity for implementation of code and related matters.
Excellent. Would anybody like to speak to the motion?
I'm in support of this as it seems like it's going to free up some space for more housing, more affordable housing for folks in the higher concentrated area that seems like they will need more housing as our community grows. This is just a recommendation, so I anticipate a lot more work to happen on these changes and a lot more discussion, and I appreciate the points raised by the public comment of making sure that we're really looking through things, not just rubber stamping things, and I think that's a point well taken and that we will follow this process, but tonight we are only recommending approval of Section 15.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. I would also like to state that this is removing regulations that affect smaller houses, mostly residential. As it clearly states, one of the concerns was what kind of properties does this bring up? It says to reduce restrictions that currently deter construction for compact housing types and expand provisions to allow for more compact housing types, including small lot housing, cottage homes. This is kind of those tiny homes that's going on, and we're discovering that the tiny home trend and being able to build on your own properties, there's restrictions, and so we're making it with less regulations, and I personally am a big fan of less regulations and allowing people to build easier on their property. So I will also be supporting number 15. Thank you. So can we have a vote, please? Excellent. 7 yeses, no nos, and it passes. All right, moving on to case number S12641. May we hear the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you. This is a request to subdivide 2 lots in one tract into one lot and vacate a 60-foot right-of-way of Ingress Street on the western property boundary of Campbell Creek Commercial Park Subdivision Tract E, originally dedicated per Plat 72-225. No municipal reviewing agencies have objected to the proposed vacation or preliminary plat. No comments have been received from the public or the community councils. The Traffic Engineering Department has no objection to the vacation of Ingress Street right-of-way. The following criteria must be considered in any vacation of public rights-of-way. Criteria 1, the applicant has attached their statement that the right-of-way of Ingress Street is surplus to current and future public needs. The proposed Lot E2 will have access to East 54th Avenue on the north and East 56th Avenue to the south. The adjacent parcels on the west, to the west of the right-of-way do not rely on Ingress Street for legal or physical access. The southern terminus of Ingress Street right-of-way is closed to through traffic and is only used for internal circulation. Criteria 2, this portion of Ingress Street is not part of the official streets and highways plan. Criteria 3 and 4, as demonstrated by the applicant and confirmed by the reviewing agencies, the subject right-of-way is not located on the half-mile or quarter-mile grids. Criteria 5, this vacation will not have any impact on traffic circulation and is not part of the official streets and highways plan. As demonstrated by the applicant and confirmed by reviewing agencies, this right-of-way is in excess of municipal need because it's surrounded by a property that does not access, because it is surrounded by property that's accessed by other dedicated right-of-ways. Criteria 6, this vacation will not result in realignment of any existing right-of-way and does not impact traffic circulation. Agencies have expressed no objection to the requested vacation of 60-foot right-of-way of Ingress Street. Therefore, staff believes that the right-of-way is in excess of municipal need and recommends approval of this vacation and plat subject to conditions A and B on page 4 of the staff report. The memo before you removes condition 2B as the private development department did not intend for this to be a condition of approval, rather an advisory note. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the staff? Hearing none, request, yes, may I hear from the petitioner, please?
Good evening. My name is Laquita Chmielowski. I'm the Land Use Planning Manager with Dow, and I'm here tonight representing Solid Waste Services for this plat, and I'd like to reserve any of my remaining time for rebuttal. So as was mentioned, the project's located on East 56 at the northeast corner of East 56 and Ingra, and the property is made up of 3 separate parcels, and then of course the Ingra Street right-of-way. So the purpose of the plat is really to combine this into one property and so that it would function the way that it does today and in preparation for potential future redevelopment. So this kind of shows you the layout of the land for the existing solid waste central transfer station. The central transfer station was originally located on the eastern portion of the property that's highlighted in red. In about 2006, they obtained the 2 properties on the western portion. Sometime after that point, Ingra was gated and access was through East 56 onto Ingra into the site. We do have encroachment permits for the gates, and as staff mentioned, the properties to the west get their access from other right-of-ways and not from Ingra. And then this is just a view of the preliminary plat that you have a copy of in your packet, showing the vacation of the internal lot lines and then the right-of-way. And as I mentioned, this is really in preparation for how the facility works today. And then, as most of you know, the new central transfer station is being constructed on the south side of East 56. And so once that's opened, there's plans for redevelopment of this property, probably a reuse and recycling center. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. You have 8 minutes and 2 seconds left. How would you like to save your time for rebuttal?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, thank you. Open this up to public testimony. Is there anybody that would like to speak regarding case S12641?
Good evening.
Good evening. May I have your name, please?
My name is Hans Schweiger. And,
I'm sorry, excuse me, sir. Could you please direct the mic closer to your mouth, the mic right there? Yeah, it's not,
My name is Hans Schweiger, and I am here to speak for myself and on behalf of the owner of the Clippership motorhome.
oh, thank you.
I own a portion of the property joining Ingra Street, subject for the vacation of a 60-foot right-of-way. I am requesting the common procedure to apply 30 feet to each side of the adjoining property owners. Years ago, this section of Ingra Street was approved to be vacated only to miss out on the recording because one property owner did not want to pay more city taxes. I own some of this property for almost 50 years, and I was never late to pay the taxes. There is also a drainage problem on the northern portion of the Ingra Street right-of-way, which I could take care of if the property or the vacation is done as it is usually done, that each adjoining property owner takes half of it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And for clarification, Hans, could you spell your last name for us?
My last name is Schweiger.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Excellent. And sir, before you sit down, hold on just one second. Do we have any questions for Hans Schlager?
So I just wanted to clarify, so you are in support of this request?
Yes, I am in support, but it should be split half and half as it is commonly done.
Okay, split half and half. Okay, thank you.
And I was, actually, it was agreed one time to do it by the former manager of the transfer station, but he said, well, he needs the street now. But now it's not needed anymore, supposedly.
Okay, thank you.
Hans, and so your concern with that is, one, you'd like to see that easement split 50-50 so that, you know, and the other thing is you said that there's a drainage problem down there.
Yes, there is a drainage problem for many years, since they surcharged the street and paved it. And there is a 8-inch culvert in there. The city put that in, and it freezes up, and I always have water in the back of my property.
Yeah, I'm really familiar with that area. I think anybody that's been to since they rerouted the drive all the way through and did that big snake, that's
Yes.
right, that's what you're talking about, right along the back of your property.
It's where,
So where they paved that, you now have water accumulating on the backside of your property?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Excellent.
So it would be helpful if it is split up fair.
If it's split up, is it your intention to do something different with that section of property so that you don't have a drainage issue?
No, then I would have to take care of the drainage.
Okay.
Right now, I cannot do that.
All right, very good. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Hans? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Anybody else wishing to testify?
Niall Sherwood Williams. I oppose putting this forward for approval. Solid Waste Services was just one of the recent appointees of the current executive branch, the administration. There was a bit of kerfuffle, but then we got someone in there, Mr. Zapay. I'm very concerned about that area. It's very close to a lot of wetlands over there. There are a lot of, I was looking at the topography maps, and the variations in height are very small, very subtle. It says in there that they're not supposed to move any land or adjust any heights of the land. They can't plow it around. It used the word. My main concern, though, is conspiracy, and if there's been any money laundering involved or quid pro quo promises here. Right, you just had, so the head of Solid Waste Services was the former campaign manager for the mayor. Okay? You can read the documents, you know who it is. All right, Mr. Zappe, recent appointee. There's been allegations of envelopes of cash going around Anchorage for bribes. There's been FBI agents going to people's houses through the chair.
Sir, could you please speak to the topic on hand, please? I understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So we have some major multinational companies up there. Huge amounts of cash behind this, Tetra Tech and Dow. They're very involved in the environmental money laundering lobby and conspiracy and racketeering, okay, that's going to seek to shut down Anchorage by shutting down the power. Okay, that's going to be one of the ways. Another one of the ways is going to be by raising the price of solid waste services to such a prohibitive level that the public won't be able to afford it and the trash stacks up. I don't want to see my city poisoned. I'm done with the conspiracy, the money laundering, the racketeering, the nepotism and the bribery, the extortion. It's got to stop. Add an amendment to it. Rates of solid waste services are frozen for 10 years. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. William? Seeing none, is there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this particular item?
Dustin Darden. So you know on a pack of cigarettes, it'll say, warning, don't smoke these cigarettes for various reasons. On this particular proposal, since you, ladies and gentlemen, have the authority to voice your opinion before it goes to the assembly, and you know your role is critical. Every one of you, you have an ability to influence the entire municipality of Anchorage with where you sit right now. So what I would propose is on this proposal because of the state of the union, the state of the municipality of Anchorage, I'd tag on there, because you can tag on anything you want onto anything. Just like on a speech about a proposed site for a garbage facility or storage of vehicles for garbage. Any word, any phrase, it's all relatable. It's interpretable.
Mr. Darden.
Yes, sir.
What concerns do you have specifically adjusting this replat that concern like the functionality of the replat? I want to make sure we're staying on topic. Thank you.
Right. So there was a Supreme Court case. It was Sullivan versus New York, and it states that when someone's speaking to the public, they can't be hindered of their speech. So the notion of topic is one that's been abused by, people you may have had an example in your life, but the chairs of the assembly and school boards are not following the Constitution. So when members of the public are using their 3 minutes to petition their government for redress of grievances, or their leadership or their boards, it's advantageous that they not be hindered because the public has a very small portion of time. And where you say something's relatable or not, it's very arbitrary and it's nonsensical. That's the clarity is found in the First Amendment to the Constitution. So the point I was getting to was you could put on there, like on a pack of cigarettes, it says, don't smoke these because these may kill you. They may cause birth defects. But on this bill, I'd say, don't get the bioweapon injection that's being paraded as a vaccine because it could kill you in a smaller, long amount of time. And also, you could put on there, I know people that, okay, any questions?
Yeah, just how do I spell your last name?
It's spelled with a D, A-R-D-E-N.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Darden. I appreciate it. Any questions for Dustin Darden? Seeing none, thank you. Any other members wishing to speak regarding case S12641? Seeing none, petitioner, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, there was a comment from one of the people in the public about the right-of-way and why half wasn't going to their property and half going to Solid Waste Services property, because normally that is what occurs. But in this case, that right-of-way came from Tract E. So Plat 72-225 created Tract E, which was part of a larger unsubdivided parcel. And at that time, the Campbell Creek subdivision, which is to the west, already was created. So that right-of-way for Ingress Street and Tract E were created as part of Plat 72-225. So it should go back to the underlying Tract E. So that's why we asked for all the right-of-way back to the Solid Waste Services and not splitting it. And that's typically how it's handled. If you can show that all the right-of-way came from your parcel originally, then it's not typically split in half between the properties that are adjacent. That's all I have.
I have a question. So when you say Tract E, do you mean Lot E?
Yeah, so what is Tracts E, C, B, and, which make up the Solid Waste Services? That was part of a larger tract called Tract E that was platted in 72. And that's when the Ingress Street right-of-way was created. And the subdivision to the west already existed.
Already existed, and that land actually came from that?
The right-of-way came all from Tract E. So there was nothing taken from the properties to the west in that 72 plat.
Do you have any response to Mr. Hans's historical comment that this was done before and it just didn't get recorded?
I don't have any information on that.
Okay. It seems kind of material. Staff, to the staff, do you have any information about that historical note for Mr. Hans?
Thank you. Through the chair, we don't have any of the historical information that Mr. Hans referenced, but I would like to reiterate what Laquita has mentioned. The full 60-foot dedication came from previous Tract E, which has since been subdivided. That original plat 72-225 did dedicate the full 60 feet, and it's a standard practice when vacating right-of-ways that the land goes back to the property that dedicated it, in this case, entirely back to Tract E. And to speak to the concerns with drainage, while the condition of approval B2 is being removed to an advisory note, the property owner will be required to get approved drainage plans prior to any redevelopment or any regrading of the site, so that will keep further drainage issues from happening. Thank you.
Point of clarification. I'm curious, also for you as well, where the drainage issue is occurring, because my primary concern with the area is just the proximity to Campbell Creek, especially paired with the transfer station, one of Anchorage's biggest. Like, is there contamination issues when the drainage does it flow directly to the creek, or do we treat some of that water? Because, I mean, when we have heavy rains, you know, there's lots of nasty hazardous materials in the area, and I'm just kind of curious if this would affect it, should it be redeveloped? Because my understanding is, you know, as this need for the transfer station grows, it's going to get moved, and I would just be concerned how regrading will affect its drainage into the creek.
Sure, I can help answer that. So this plat wouldn't change the drainage patterns that are occurring today. I'm not aware of the drainage issues, but I'll definitely be talking to Solid Waste Services about what's happening today. But as far as any redevelopment, the municipality of Anchorage has a drainage criteria that we have to meet. So if the site's regraded or new structures are built and we have to get a building permit, we have to do a drainage analysis, and we can't discharge stormwater in an amount greater than what leaves the site today. And we also have to look at, are we impacting our neighbors? You know, we can't create a situation where we're causing flooding issues for them. So that is a huge analysis, an engineering analysis that gets done at that time as part of the building permit process. But definitely, I will pass along the comments that we received tonight to Solid Waste Services about what's occurring now.
And through the chair, I apologize for interrupting. I don't have my request to speak button. But when we get these plats and the vacation request, it does get routed to private development and watershed management. No drainage issues that were brought up during that reviewing period. So as far as we're concerned, if there's any redevelopment, like the petitioner stated, it will go through a substantial drainage analysis. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I could have sworn I saw on one of these documents that drainage was actually checked off, you know, the one that has the, you know, where are there creeks or are there drainage issues, and drainage issues was specifically marked. So I don't know how this is like not known. It was in the packet. Unless I'm just misremembering.
Would have been on the application.
Hey, what?
Would have been on the application.
Yeah.
Through the chair, page 25 of your packet has the watershed management watercourse mapping summary. And it shows that there are drainage ways in the area. So it just says, does contain drainage ways located on substantial documents. And so that is just clarifying that in any redevelopment, we know that there are waterways that may be impacted, further requiring those drainage analysis and testing.
And so those are located and identified on the mapping as the form states then?
That is correct. And watershed management did not provide comment stating that there were substantial drainage issues that needed to be concerned in this platting action.
This new mapping isn't required. Thank you. Any other questions for staff or the petitioner? Don? Mr. Porter?
Could you please clarify under the department recommendations that you said one of them is you're withdrawing one of those. Could you specifically indicate which number that is, letter, number?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, on page 4 of your staff report, condition B2 is being removed as a condition of approval and will just be an advisory note. The private development department makes these comments typically when we see actual proposals for redevelopment. It's not a comment typically seen on platting action since there's no development associated with the platting action at this time.
So for our purposes, we should renumber and remove item B2 and only go with B1 and B3 and B4?
That is correct.
And then that should be renumbered to 2 and 3. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions for the petitioner or through staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion? Well, excuse me, thank you. We're going to close the... Now, do I hear a motion to approve the plat to subdivide 2 lots and 1 tract into 1 lot and vacate a 60-foot right-of-way on English Street on the western property of Tract E dedicated per plat 72-225? We have a motion by Don Porter, second by Valerie Ritz. Don, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, in the case S12641, a Campbell Creek Commercial Park and right-of-way vacation, I move to approve the request to subdivide 2 lots and 1 tract into 1 lot and vacation of the 60-foot right-of-way of Ingrid on the western property boundary of Tract E dedicated per plat 72-225, subject to the following condition 1, which would be record a suitable plat within 24 months of its approval and any time extensions. I intend to support this motion.
Excellent. Don, do you care why you proved to support this?
Yes, it's been demonstrated that the right-of-way dedication has been given back to the original lot owner to which it was taken, and so that is why it's going specifically now to the configuration that's being shown. The petitioner has supplied adequate support for the request for vacation of the 60-foot right-of-way, so I intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak to this motion? I would like to say I also move to approve it. Some of the things that have been brought to this, I think the long-term vision is the merger of the 2 lots into 1 tract for future improvement. This is currently a solid waste facility. As we know, any kind of development, the property will have to go through pretty rigorous EPA and environmental inspections simply because of the nature of the current business. I believe at that time, the rigorous study will probably require significant improvement to drainage and stormwater. Those surveys will end up benefiting Mr. Hans, the adjacent owner of Coopership, tremendously in the improvement of this lot. And overall, considering the age and the dilapidation of that structure and the long-term improvement of what will happen, I think it's in the best interest that this is improved so that area can be cleaned up in the long run. So I will move to approve. Hearing nothing else, may we have a vote? We have 7 yeas, 0 noes. Motion is passed. Now, may I have a move to approve plat for 24 months subject to conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4? It's moved by Don Porter, second by Valerie Ritz. Don, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would like to move to approve the plat for 24 months subject to the following conditions of items 1, 3, and 4 as noted in the staff packet, as the planning staff has requested that item 2 not be included in our approval.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Hearing none, I would like to speak. I am a little concerned about removal of 2, to be honest with you. I mean, it says 2 was to submit to private development for review and approval a comprehensive site and draining plan to resolve the need for drainage easements and drainage improvements and to demonstrate that all post-development drainage patterns will not adversely impact adjacent properties, right-of-ways, and to include suitable outfall. Any required drainage improvements shall be designed in accordance with the most current municipality of Anchorage design criteria. I'm kind of curious why we're eliminating that when the biggest concern from the public was drainage issues. I'm inclined to leave that in there. I would like to hear thoughts on that.
I too am concerned about that. I mean, on page 48, we've got a letter from private development that talks specifically about drainage, and, I think that the public has voiced concerns about it. It's identified as an issue. I would be in favor of leaving it in as well.
Through the chair, just to provide clarification, this comment from private development is standard when there's a proposed structural development or development of roadway, of right-of-way. So in the current B2, it states, demonstrate that all post-development drainage patterns will not adversely affect any properties. In this platting action, there's no proposed development, which is why it would be an advisory comment instead of a condition of approval, because this platting action and easement request have no associated development. So it would be a advisory note in the future. If there is development, these plans and tests will be required.
So at the time that development is proposed or planned, there'll be another approval process?
That is correct.
Okay, as long as that's being addressed in that chain of events.
And we would typically leave that in as an advisory note to let the applicant know when they get to the stage of getting building permits and doing actual development, those plans are required.
And I guess now that I think about it, it makes sense, because how do you develop an environmental or drainage plan when you're not sure what the structure you're going to build on it looks like yet?
And through the chair.
Yeah.
Any development is going to be required, a civil site plan designed by a civil engineer is going to be required as part of the development plan and building permit. And so at that point in time, that civil site plan will require review and demonstration of drainage patterns.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to change, my initial was to not support that movement based on number 2, but under discussion, I will be supporting this movement. Have anybody else that would like to speak? Hearing none, let's have a vote. And 7 yeses, 0 noes. The motion is passed. Excellent. Okay, moving on. Now we're now looking for case number S12602B. Staff, may we have your presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were 4 public comments received on this case, and they're in the supplemental packet that I'm holding up to show everyone. Also, on page 159 of the packet is the Huffman O'Malley Community Council's comments. Their community council comments are included in the packet.
Did you say that was 159?
That's correct. Page 159. I'll speak up.
Thank you.
This is a request to subdivide 4 BLM lots into 32 lots with vacation of 3 easements along the south lot boundary. The purpose of the plat is to create a new 32-home residential subdivision. These single-family residential lots have lot sizes that range from a minimum of half an acre to a maximum of a little over 1 acre. The preliminary plat shows a 60-foot wide right-of-way dedication for a new, yet-to-be-named street connecting O'Malley Road to Haynes Street. The preliminary plat also dedicates 75 feet of right-of-way to O'Malley Road and dedicates 30 feet of right-of-way to Haynes Street. The zoning is R7, single-family residential, 20,000 square foot minimum lot district with special limitations in a recently approved rezoning. And I've listed the special limitations in order on pages 6 and 7 of the packet. I'll go through them now. The first special limitation is that within the zoning district, residential density cannot exceed 1.7 dwelling units per acre. This subdivision will result in 1.42 dwelling units per acre, which is less than the maximum allowed by this special limitation, so it meets that special limitation. Number 2, visual enhancement landscaping is required along Hain Street. That's 8 foot of a vegetative buffer along Hain Street within this subdivision is required. And the site is naturally, has mature natural vegetation that exceeds the visual enhancement landscape standard. And at the time of development of these lots, there'll be a zoning inspection to ensure that visual enhancement landscaping in accordance with this special limitation is provided along Hain Street. So that's a guaranteed to sort of requirement to continue. Number 3, a pedestrian pathway is required to connect to O'Malley Road, and this special limitation is met, complies. The subdivision agreement will include a pedestrian pathway along the street in this new internal, yet to be named street, connecting O'Malley Road to Hain Street. Number 4, prior to plat approval, an aquifer test is to be performed by a hydrogeologist to determine that there's adequate water availability for the proposed new lots as well as the existing lots. And that is a condition of approval of this plat. It's written in the conditions. Number 5, in the last one, install a fire gate from the subdivision road to Hain along the, as long as approved by the traffic and fire. So the traffic engineering division and the fire plan review division both oppose a fire gate on this new street gating access to the subdivision. Therefore, a no gate will be required. And the comments from the fire department are on page 139 of your packet, and the traffic engineering division's comments are on page 142 of your packet as well. In regards to the vacation requests for those 3 easements along the south boundary of the subdivision, the Traffic Engineering Division, Development Services Department, Right-of-Way Division, and Alaska Department of Transportation all have no objection to the vacation of the easements. Therefore, the department is recommending approval of the vacations of those 33-foot easements, letters A, B, and C on page 8 of your packet, subject to the recording of a final plat within 24 months and any approved time extensions. The department is also recommending preliminary approval of the plat for 24 months, subject to conditions 1 through 9 on pages 8 and 9 of your packet. I'll go through just some of the highlights of the conditions of approval. So the first one is resolve utility easements, and that's a standard condition of approval. The second condition of approval is to submit a comprehensive site grading and drainage plan. The third is to enter into a subdivision agreement for public improvements, and included in there is the pathway, pedestrian pathway that I talked about earlier. I'll skip over 4. Number 5 is provide street lighting at the intersection of this newly constructed street and O'Malley Road. Number 6 is to obtain a permit from DOT for the new road to access O'Malley. Number 7 is to submit plans, data, tests, and engineering reports to on-site water and wastewater services section to substantiate the capability of Lot 32 to adequately dispose of wastewater as required by Anchorage Municipal Code Title 15. Number 8 is to obtain approval from on-site water and wastewater services of an aquifer test performed by a hydrogeologist to determine that there's adequate water available for the proposed new lots and for existing lots. And number 9 are plat notes, mostly about access, and the last plat note, G, calls out that visual enhancement landscaping required along Haynes Street. So that is the department's presentation on the proposed subdivision, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, the applicant here is here to make a presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I'm sorry if this is a dumb question, but you skipped over number 4, and I just wondered if there was like a reason. Maybe I just missed you, maybe you explained it earlier.
He did.
He did, you did explain it earlier.
He just said I'm skipping over 4.
Yeah, just skipping over it, and so I just wanted to...
Oh, yeah, through the chair, thank you for the question, Ms. Weltzine. Conditioner approval number 4, I thought was just sort of insignificant, but it says, show a 30-foot wide, show 30-foot radius corners on lots 1 and 21 as required by the Design Criteria Manual 1.9F. So the Traffic Engineering Division, Assistant Traffic Engineer Randy Ribble, in those comments from the Traffic Department, asked for this. And what it is just simply at the, there's a little cul-de-sac street that comes off of this new road that will be constructed. And at those corners, the Traffic Department just wants to see that there's the right kind of corner clearance. Just simply, it's a drafting thing.
Thank you.
And he also indicated to me that he believes that it's met. He just wants to see it as a standard course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a question for staff.
Don?
Could you go over the pedestrian access to O'Malley? That's 6 foot. Could you give me a more clear description of that requirement?
Yes, through the chair. The pedestrian pathway will connect Haynes Street to O'Malley on this new, yet to be named road, and no pedestrian pathway is required for a Class B district, a rural residential district. However, the special limitation requires that there be one, and so it will be constructed with the street on one side of the street. The pathway does not have a detailed description here because while it may be a gravel path, the subdivider want some flexibility to potentially upgrade the pathway if they do a little bit closer to an urban street. So instead of a 24-foot wide strip paved street for Class B area improvements, they could potentially do a little bit fancier street for a very nice subdivision. And so they wanted the ability to work out with staff, private development, non-motorized transportation coordinator, potentially a fancier pathway. So that's kind of the explanation there.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, if we can have our petitioner, please. Excellent. State your name into the record.
Sure. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Craig Bennett, and that's B-E-N-N-E-T-T, and with S4 Group. I represent the petitioners tonight, Dave and Cody Holquist with Holquist Homes, and the professionals with Triad Engineering and Terrasat Environmental are also here to help answer any civil or hydrology-related questions the board may have tonight. Staff presented the case well, so I'll just briefly touch on a couple of the main points. This platting application is to subdivide 4 existing lots and create 32 new lots. The proposed Sky Ridge subdivision has access to two right-of-ways, O'Malley Road on the north and Haines Street on the east. The proposed through street and cul-de-sac will be dedicated right-of-way, dedicating 75 feet of right-of-way on the north for O'Malley Road, and 30 foot will be dedicated for Haines Street. We have worked extensively with DOT, MOA Fire and Traffic on the proposed road requirements and location. We're also requesting that 3 unneeded roadway easements to the south be vacated. This is supported by planning as shown on page 7. And as staff said, the zoning is R7 SL with 5 special limitations. The first is to limit the residential density to 1.7 dwelling units per acre. R7 allows for 2 DUA, and the proposed plat is about 1.4, and it's well under the 1.7 limitation. The second SL is requiring L1 landscaping on Haines Street. The third is a pedestrian pathway, is required to connect to Lake Otis Parkway or O'Malley Road, and the current plan is to construct a pedestrian pathway along the new road from Haines up to O'Malley. And the fourth SL, prior to plat approval, an aquifer test is to be performed, and the MOA on-site will need to approve the test and results before the plat can be recorded. Lastly, install a fire gate from the subdivision road to Haines, as long as approved by Traffic and Fire, and both departments have made comments on this SL as shown on page 7 in the packet. And I will conclude that this conforms to the HDP, the 2040 land use plan, and current zoning. There are no variances being asked for. All of the reviewing agencies, such as planning, traffic, private development, DOT, right-of-way, fire, support this subdivision. And I ask that this board approve the Sky Ridge subdivision plat. And thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll save the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Excellent.
I do have a question.
You have 7 minutes and 26 seconds for rebuttal, but does anybody have any questions for the petitioner?
I do.
Don?
Do you support all of the department recommendations as stated in the packet?
Through the chair, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, just for clarification, I know it's in the packet, but I do want to make sure we have this conversation, and so it's at least on the video testimony. Can you explain why there wasn't a direct access on the Lake Otis, since that seems to be the route with the least amount of traffic? That's typically the way it would go, and why you didn't, maybe you can speak as to why you didn't go down 112th.
Yes, sir, I do have a detail if I can provide it.
Excellent, I appreciate that, thank you. Figured that was going to be coming. It's going to be like mashed potatoes, have someone pass it.
There was a lot of, the community did want us to access to Lake Otis through 112th. The issue is we don't actually have access to 112th. There's right-of-way dedicated on the south side going to the subdivision below this proposed Sky Ridge terraces. On the north side of 112th, it's just an easement, a 33-foot easement, and we need 60 foot of right-of-way to build a road. And also, I can direct it back to planning staff, but the actual easement, as stated from, I believe, MOA survey, we would not be allowed to use. And that's coming from, let staff speak to that. But two things, we don't have access, and the access that is there isn't wide enough.
There was, and I was just reading through the packet here, were there additionally any heights restrictions? I mean, from what I recall, at least the lots to the south, it drops off pretty substantially there, doesn't it? I used to ride my dirt bike all over this area, so I grew up in this. It's kind of sad to see it get chopped up in the houses now. I mean, that was my old dirt bike days, but
there is a steep little bluff there on
right
112th.
So, okay.
Also, the natural topo wouldn't allow it anyway.
Okay, and so now that you're exiting out onto O'Malley, that's pretty close to that street light there. And that's a pretty busy O'Malley and Lake Otis and O'Malley. And so Can you speak a little bit about some of the protections and some of those issues that you've had to address? Because I imagine exiting that close to a pretty busy intersection and median creates some articulation issues.
Yes, I'll let Brandon with Triad speak to that. We did speak to DOT quite extensively.
Through the chair, Brandon Marcotte with Triad Engineering, M-A-R-C-O-T-T. As Mr. Bennett had mentioned, we have talked to DOT pretty extensively about this plat configuration. We actually met with them a number of times and actually explored a cul-de-sac configuration in order to try and address the community's concerns with connections through to Haines Street. O'Malley Road is classified as a Class 2 minor arterial. Class 2 minor arterial ranges from 10,000 to 20,000 average daily trips. It currently sees less than 12,000 average daily trips as of 2019. It was recently upgraded in 2018 with 4 lanes of travel, 2 in either direction, with a center turn lane and street lighting near that future intersection. So our discussions with DOT, we also discussed the grades in that area, and the grades are minimal. They're flat and adequate for intersection connection. And each of our discussions with DOT, they didn't voice any concern with that connection as we had it proposed. So the center turn lane will allow individuals to turn out, make left turns safely into that center turn lane before merging to head westbound on O'Malley.
Okay, the speed limit on that's 50 miles per hour, isn't it?
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, I'm not aware of what the speed limit is at that exact location.
Okay.
It's
Excellent.
50 miles an hour there.
Yeah. Any other questions for petitioner?
Mine
Mr. Young?
Mine pertains specifically to that as well. So my understanding is there's 5 lanes of traffic out in front. There were two functioning lanes of traffic and a turn lane at this time?
Through the chair, Mr. Young, there's 2 eastbound lanes, a center, what they call suicide lane, and then 2 westbound lanes. So anybody leaving to go left would have to turn out into that center turn lane, ideally if they're waiting for oncoming traffic westbound.
Okay. Like I said, my main concern, and I'm sure DOT went over this with you, is just the amount of cars that come through there, especially at a fast pace. Like there are a significant amount of speeders in that area that come down that, I mean, I've watched motorcycles rip through it. And I'd just be concerned about the amount of cars that'd be turning left onto O'Malley, and whether or not something like a median would need to be put in. I know it'd be unfortunate, but at the same time might be necessary just because of the amount of traffic. But it sounds like you guys have already gone over all of that with DOT.
Through the chair, yes, we've shown them the plat extensively. This configuration is consistent with other roads up O'Malley as well. Haines Street, for example, is at the end of the current improvements. And O'Malley will be receiving improvements again next year all the way up to Birch. So there's many access roads onto O'Malley that encounter the same, generally the same amount of traffic. In this case, we have a section of O'Malley that's relatively flat, and it's relatively close to an intersection, so there can be an expectation of intermittent traffic flow, as opposed to maybe further up hillside where you have steeper road grades and a little bit more continuous traffic flow. So there could be an expectation that there will be available openings for people to exit left and head westbound on O'Malley. There's also a condition that we're going to provide intersection lighting at this location as well, so it'll be fully lit, fully signed, and comply with DOT's requirements.
Okay, the intersection lighting is probably, so it would just be a stop sign there, not a full intersection, correct?
Correct. We would have to submit for an approach road permit to DOT. In this case, it's probably going to be limited to a stop sign with intersection lighting. I don't foresee anything more critical than that, but they would obviously have a chance to review and provide or ask for whatever improvement requirements that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the petitioner?
The only question I would have is just the comment that was laid on our table from Miss Laura Bonner, I think. She talks about the water, and then I was going through the packet, I see a lot of water right reservation. So can you just talk a little bit about the due diligence you've done about the drinking water and the drilling of the wells? And I know it's kind of for a later day because this is preliminary, but if we could just have a little bit of background on that.
Sure. Through the chair, we'll have Mr. Young with Terrasat answer those questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, my name is Dan Young, Y-O-U-N-G. I'm president of Terrasat, a professional hydrogeologist. I have looked at 250 well logs within 1 mile of this property. 205 of those have well yields. The average yield of the wells are 17.6 gallons per minute, which is much more than adequate for a subdivision. The lowest yield is 2.5 gallons a minute, and the requirement for a single-family house is about 0.3 gallons per minute. So there's plenty of water. One of the written commenters, if you can look at page 15, I believe, 15 of your packet, there was a written comment that was submitted, I believe, today, and he was in the first subdivision to the right of the word petition site on page 15, and that subdivision has 7 lots. I was able to get 6 of the 7 wells. The average yield there is 9.3 gallons per minute, which is way more than adequate for this subdivision. So the preliminary investigation is there's plenty of water in the surrounding community. There's 5 aquifers, and most of the wells only penetrate the upper 3 to 6 feet of those aquifers. So there's even more water if the wells were to extend farther. And I will have to do an aquifer analysis, and that will require pumping 1 well, monitoring 2 others, and then doing extensive calculations to predict the adequacy of the subdivision and also the impacts to the surrounding community.
Thank you very much. That answers my question. Thank you.
Mr. Young, I realize that these are larger than average lots, but there's, 300 homes directly to the south that all have public water. Can you speak as to why public water is not being extended into this area since it's adjacent?
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, thanks for following up. I was trying to piggyback on Mr. Young's testimony. We actually explored extending public water up into this development. We were involved extensively with the development of the Terraces subdivision. The Terraces subdivision is approximately 90 feet below this development in elevation, and the uppermost portion of Terraces, the water pressure at the top end of the loop is right about 40 psi. Now, by tariff, AWU is required to provide 20 psi to their customers. However, what we have found through the Terraces development was that anything below 40 psi is generally undesirable to the public. So once you go up to the second floor of your home, your water pressure reduces down to something somewhat of a trickle, and people are not happy with that. AWU got plenty of questions and concerns about lack of water pressure, even though it was meeting tariff. So if we were to extend water up into this development, we would be forced to put in a booster station, which is something that's not within AWU's water master plan to do. It's a very costly component that requires yearly maintenance and ownership by AWW, so it's generally cost prohibitive to extend public utilities in terms of public water into this area.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, you have 7 minutes and 26 seconds for rebuttal. We will now open it up to public testimony. Is there anybody who would like to speak regarding this development?
Dustin Darden. I just wanted to commend, first of all, the fact that we're using naturally sourced water that's not treated with hexafluoric acids, hexafluorocates. So that's a commendable thing. That's a good example. We have a lot of water in this municipality. There's no reason to take some of the best water in the entire nation out of Eklutna, glacier water, and then pervert it with a classified neurotoxin that's known to reduce the IQ in developing children after their mother drinks the water. Also, the requests from the municipality seem very arbitrary and asinine in nature. It just makes me wonder, like, where could you end with your requests? Like, it makes sense if we're going to go this route and these just completely insane ideas, that we do something a little more creative than, like, and if we're talking about vegetation that's going to be planted, I mean, we could do, you know, you could really specify that they need to be apple trees. They have to produce, like, they have to have enough juice in the tree to produce a gallon of apple juice within 5 years. You know, it's just, you could continue on, but is that something that we want to do? I don't know. It seems like it's kind of a strong arm, and you know, they want to have the gates up because they don't want to have a whole bunch of crackheads and methamphetamine addicts going through and, you know, pillaging their community where they're drinking clean water. But you guys want to have it accessible to the fire department that's being militarized so they can go in there and contact trace them and stick some kind of bioweapon into their arms. If they want to put up a gate, let them put up the gate. You know, it's just, there's a lot of stuff here, and there's a lot of layers within that city hall that aren't present, that had probably a lot of say in this. So if this transmission could somehow hit your noggin and think a little bit more before you start writing crazy stuff down.
Thank you, Mr. Darden. Does anybody have any questions for Dustin Darden? Thank you.
Niall Sherwood Williams. Through the chair to members of the public. My father's involved in construction and built over 300 homes. I assisted him with building over 50 of them. Whenever you hear someone in planning meeting and they say things that are nebulous, but they don't talk about specifics, it's concerning to me. So, in particular, when I hear a street not yet named, and through the chair, one member of this body, and through the chair, whoever it was over there, which, by the way, all three of the individuals that spoke over there during today's meeting did not identify themselves clearly on the record. But secondly, a street not yet named. Much discussion as to the width of the street, what way it's going. So they want them to exit west on O'Malley. What's that heading towards? Well, clearly that's heading towards the railroad. There's a giant gravel pit there. So there was also discussion as to 1.7 units, dwelling units, being the maximum amount allowable per acre. They came up here and said, we only have 1.42 dwelling units per acre. It's because they're manipulating the word. When I hear dwelling unit, I think number of families. That would be the real definition of the word. When they say dwelling unit, they are manipulating the word to mean something greater. So could it be a tenement building with 100 families? That's what the devil is in. The devil is in the details. Focus on those things. This gate, private landowner can put up a gate any way they damn well please. Period, end dot. The citizens have a right to use their land the way they wish. We were talking about the width of the land. Why do we need such a big roadway to go through there? It's because they're going to have giant trucks going in and out of there. Don't get it confused. They're talking about number of trips per day. But number of trips per day, they're going to have buses filled with people. Transporting them from the biomedical assault clinic to the gas chambers. And I'm not talking in rhetorical hyperbole here. I'm talking real time, real humanity. Our neighbors are dying by bioweapons. Anchorage Fire Department are tyrants. APD, not going to protect you. Wake up, people.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Niall Williams? Hearing none. Anybody else that would like to speak regarding this development? Excellent. We may hear back from the petitioner. You have 7 minutes and 26 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you, Craig Bennett. Just want to say thank you for listening, and if there's any other questions, I'm be happy to answer them.
Just real quick regarding anybody have any questions for the petitioner real quick? Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to clarify that the water is being provided by well services, and you've covered that. The sewer is going to be provided by WWU, is that correct? What's in the application?
Through the chair, correct. So it will be public sewer, private water.
Thank you very much.
Through the speaker, are you guys planning a shared community well or individual well sites on the lots?
Yes, sir. Every lot will have its own well.
Excellent. Just a couple things. One of the individuals who spoke, Mr. Darden, was concerned about the vegetation. Can you speak quickly as to why there is a vegetation requirement for construction?
So the assembly added a L1 landscaping along Hain Street just because some of the neighbors there at the rezone hearing asked for it, and we agreed to it. So it'll just be 8-foot natural vegetation. Will leave the 8-foot strip there for sure.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if you saw that, but we actually just voted earlier to, one of the provisions was to remove the requirement to have a licensed landscaper design your dirt work.
Thank you.
Yeah, that should drive keep the cost down. Other question they had was regarding the gate. So about putting a gate on private property, but my understanding, if I'm correct here, the gate, once this development, the road actually becomes municipal property, is that correct?
Correct. So this will be dedicated right away, and the assembly asked for a gate to be placed at Hain unless fire and traffic did not want it. And both fire and traffic said no, and even DOT wrote a letter, I think on page 51, not wanting a fire gate.
Okay, thank you. And the final concern that was brought up just had to do with the dwelling units, and can you speak as to what zoning does as far as restricting a conception that you might have one property with 100 units in it? Speak to what 34 dwelling units actually represents.
So this will have, the proposed plat's 32 lots, so there'll be 32 single-family homes, but in code you also can do an ADU,
okay.
Potentially. So, but it'll be 32 dwelling units, one single family on each lot is allowed in R7 zoning.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner?
Thank you.
Excellent. Hearing none. You want to turn to your packet and page 8? Do we have a motion to approve, oh, yes.
Want to clarify that there are no other testimonies?
Oh, yes, I am. Thank you.
Testimony is closed.
Any other testimony? Thank you. Thanks, Don. All right, hearing none, we'll close testimony. Turn to page 8. May I have a motion to approve the vacation of a 33-foot wide easement for roadway and appurtenances thereto the U.S. patent number 1138565, recorded September 29th, 1953, in book page 96, page 395, subject to recording a final plat within 24 months. All right, moved by Don Porter, seconded by Valerie Ritz. Don, you want to speak to your motion?
Given the testimony here for the vacation in lieu of all the other development that's going on, I am going to support this motion.
State your motion, please. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I move to approve the vacation of a 33-foot easement for the roadway and appurtenances thereto, U.S. Patent 1138565, recorded September 29, 1953, book 96, page 395, subject to recording the final plat within 24 months or any approved time extension.
Thank you, and we will just reference back to the reason that you approved this. Anybody else would like to speak to this motion? Excellent. I'm also going to move to approve. I do want to point out that the public testimony from the, was it Hillside Public? It was 159, I believe. Forgive me. The Hillside Community Council also, this was brought before them, and they support this development. And that's an important, this is a commentary from the direct homeowners in the area, and they support this development. So I'll be moving to approve as well. Can we have a vote? Seven yeses, 0 noes. The motion passes. All right. Next, can I have a motion to approve the vacation of a 33-foot easement for the roadway and appurtenances, patent number 1134178, recorded on October 16th, 1968. It's a lot to type. It's okay. I failed typing class. All right. Move to approve by Don Porter, second by Valerie Ritz. Don, would you care to speak to your motion? Or state your motion? And
I move for approval of Department Recommendation B that has been read into the record. I will be supporting this motion.
thank you. Don, would you care to speak to your motion?
Again, for the reasons stated earlier, the overall development meets the requirements of the Title 21 and the plattering requirements, and I will be moving to approve.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to this motion? Excellent. I will also be voting to approve. Also noted reference the comments from the previous motion, as well as it is important to note that this complies with the Traffic Engineering Division of Fire Plan and Review Division purposes for the, okay, so basically if we look at all our departments, all the departments supported this as well, so. Okay, and may we have a vote? Seven yeses, 0 no, motion passes. Next, can I have a motion to approve the vacation of a 33-foot easement for roadway and appurtenances subject to the patent under 1133-875? We have a motion by Don Porter, second by Karen McGillivray. Don, would you state your motion, please?
Yes, I move to approve the vacation of a 33-foot easement as stated in Department Recommendation C that has been read into the record.
Excellent. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, for the reasons that we've discussed earlier, this allows for the development of the overall plat with the number of lots and the circulation that allows through that lot through the Platting Department Title 21 regulations.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this motion? Hearing none, may we have a vote? Seven yeses, 0 noes, motion passes. Finally, can I have an approval of the plat for 24 months subject to the conditions? Motion by Don Porter, second by Jana Weltzen. Don, would you like to speak to your motion?
I move to approve the plat for 24 months, including items from the platting packet, items D 1, 2, 3, A, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that would be 9A through 9G.
Excellent. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. I intend to support this motion. We've heard significant information and a significant packet that has been negotiated through the planning department. All of the department recommendations, such as providing street lighting, other items, the aquifer is being tested. We have a comprehensive understanding that the regulations are being met, and there's also to note that the petitioner agrees with all the recommendations of the planning board. So I move to support this motion.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? All right, I also intend to support this motion. I do want to point out that there was some concern regarding the addition of the 30-plus wells into the area and that effect on neighboring lots. And I want to think it's really important under Section 4, or was it that's, Section 4, prior to plat approval, an aquifer test is to be performed by a hydrologist to determine if there is adequate water available for the proposed new lots and for existing lots. This is a very expensive testing procedure, and there's a reason that it's not done prior to the replat, because if your replat is not completed, then why would you spend that kind of money? So you want to make sure that that it's a feasible project before you put that much investment into a very expensive test. Additionally, upon completion of each well will have to individually pass a COSA, which is a rigorous additional test and standard individually, even to be financeable, meaning that if those individual wells do not perform on a very rigorous municipal and federal level, they will not be able to get financing, and that would be devastating to the value of these properties. So I anticipate it is in the builder's best interest to make sure that these properties exceed the minimum requirements for well performance. Additionally, regarding the fire gate, although it was in the plan, it does say the traffic engineering division of the fire plan review opposed the installation of the fire gate. That's because they want to, in case there's a fire or there's a accident, they want to make sure they have adequate access from all possible areas in order to service that section. And if you were to put in the fire gate, it would be a dead-end road. My only concern with this project is just, I think that, and that'll go through a traffic study when they go further into it, or when they start doing development, I'm a little concerned about the exit onto O'Malley Road. That's a busy street, and I know there's a street light there, and you would hope that they would slow down, but that can be both positive and negative. They can both speed up to try to miss a yellow light, or they could slow down because there is one. I think it'll work in the interim, but in time, we'll see how that functions, but I will be moving to approve. Anybody else?
I'll just add that there was a very thorough community council engagement report, and I really appreciated the specificity of the questions and the answers that were provided to the communities. I thought you did a good job on that. And by and large, the public comments were in support of the project, so I'll be a yes.
Thank you. May we have a vote? Seven yeas, 0 nays. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, let's make sure I didn't miss anything. I got that new chair smell. All right, so figuring this out. I appreciate your patience in dealing with me on this. Okay, wrapping up, appearance requests, other persons to be heard, reports, any additional reports? Board member comments? Seeing that there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Oh, wait, what? Motion to adjourn? Oh, yeah, Don did it. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Don. I didn't crash it too bad.